back, ladies and gents. After a weirdly filled week regarding my health, even though I'm completely fine and just overthinking it, welcome back to another episode of Revved Up, ladies and gentlemen. As always, I am your host Carter Leonard, back at it yet again, as we have a lot to talk about this week. But first, I want to clear the air as to why exactly there was no episode last week. I kind of already briefly mentioned it. Sorry if you hear me readjusting my seating in my chair. I apologize. But, anyways, like I was saying, um, last week was kind of weird for me because of just. I had this weird sort of pain in like my abdomen area. Now, normally, because for a lot of people who don't know, I try to get as much physical activity as I possibly can and try to work out as much as I possibly can. And I was starting to feel a little bit of a sore spot, if you will, like in my abdomen areas. And I'm thinking to myself, I see when you feel unwanted pain or pain that you probably haven't felt in a long time or pain that you are completely unfamiliar with, you're kind of taken aback, just like, yep, this is it. This is where the road has led to this. The road has led to this current point in my life, and I really have to start contemplating on what the next step should be. Basically, you're being over dramatic about it, but later that week, I went to my doctor's office just for a local checkup that I had to go to anyways. So I was going to be handling towards that. And they checked my blood pressure, they checked my heart rate, and nothing was out of the ordinary there. I had told them about the pain, and they said, you just have a pulled muscle right there, and it can affect your breathing if you're not careful, which that's kind of what was going on for me. I kind of felt like that I was losing a little bit of breath, but I didn't. But it wasn't to the point to where I was gonna like black out or pass out or like any of that. But it was noticeable. If it was noticeable, so if that makes any sense. So yeah, um, there you go with that. That's kind of the reason why, and the reason why that took a big toll and not in the episode not coming out the previous week was mainly due to the fact of I didn't want to talk for long sentences and then all of a sudden go like right into the microphone, because I know that's not pleasant to hear from me, and that's just not pleasant to hear regardless. So yeah, I don't think anybody wanted to hear that. So but thankfully I'm feeling a lot better right now. I kind of still kind of feel a little bit but it's mainly due to my head. Basically just a lot of sinus pressure inside my head right now. The humidity and the temperature change have really thrown me in for a loop, and that's just yeah, that's not fun. And as somebody who has like a lot of bad allergies, it's not really fun, because you also, when you have headaches like that, you kind of start to think to yourself, oh man, this is definitely life threatening, when in reality it really isn't. So there you have it with that. That's all I really need to say about that. But this past weekend, we were at Michigan International Speedway. Um, it was truly a race weekend, um, to say the least. We didn't have the O'Reilly series this past weekend. They had a little off week before we went to Pocono this upcoming weekend, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So on Saturday, ladies and gentlemen, we had the Truck Series race, and the week after, it was announced that this man would be running full time in the Cup Series for 2311 Racing next year. Corey Heim claimed his 26th win in the Craftsman Truck Series and his third overall in a part-time season. Not only did he win at Michigan, he also did so by beating the truck that he formerly occupied in the Truck Series last year, where he went on to win his 2025 Craftsman Truck Series Championship in Caden Honeycutt. Caden Honeycutt looking for his first oval win in the Truck Series this season came up so close yet again, and Caden Honeycutt was upset afterwards. Not by the result; it was still another solid day from the 11 group, and it takes a lot of momentum to go into next weekend or the following week or the following race, I should say, because they're not at Pocono this weekend. Um, but Caden was kind of frustrated, not so much for the fact of the result, but just for the fact of Corey Heim at the white flag coming down to the front stretch was aggressively blocking. And Caden saw it as more of a, like a little bit of a disrespectful sort of thing. He just said, post race, he said, "Thank God it was a company truck because I definitely would have lifted in that situation. Just, it just sucks. I felt like I've given so many this year, and I think that's what angered me the most, for sure. Just unfortunate." It also says in the article that Honeycutt just led only just one lap, and that was the 99th out of 125 scheduled laps. Carson Hocevar was also in this race, but Heim took the lead on lap 111 and did not look back from there on out. And Corey Heim in the media center after, the whole victory lane celebration, he's in the media center, he's talking with everybody, and he was asked about Caden Honeycutt's comments at the end right there, saying, basically saying, "Oh man, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have lifted in that situation." Corey Heim replied, just said, was less sympathetic, just said, and I quote, "Just get thicker skin and deal with it." That's honestly my advice to him. I also have to remind myself that despite looking younger than him, Corey Heim is actually older than Caden Honeycutt, if I recall correctly. Let me see here. Let me see. Um, yeah, he's 22 going on 23 years old. He'll actually be 23 on June 23rd. So, even though Caden does look a little bit older than him, but Caden Honeycutt is in a very unique situation because this is the best seat that he's ever stepped foot in the Craftsman Truck Series. He spent the first few years of his career with Nice Motorsports, and he was with Nice last year up until the midway point of last year, where Nice was just like, um, "We're releasing you," even though you were well inside the top 10 in points and you were trying to help us win a championship. And I think it's fair to say who won that war right there, because Tricon is still dominating while Nice is kind of trying to figure out everything else. But Caden Honeycutt was not only put in the Tricon ride, he was put in the ride that won 12 races the previous year. So I understand from a competition perspective as to why he's upset, because when you're in that 11 truck, the expectation, there's a bar, there's a standard, there's a precedent that you have to set. And I'm not saying Caden is going to win 12 races. I never thought Caden was going to win 12 races, but like 3 to 4, maybe even 5, I don't think, even then, I don't, even right now during at this point of the season, I still don't think that's ridiculous to say. But regardless, there's a bar, there's a standard that has to be set, that if you step in that ride, the expectation is you are going to go out and dominate. And I think that's what Caden was so frustrated about, and also the blocking as well. But then again, Corey Heim, while yes, he still drives the same equipment as he does, he's not full time in this series. He's not uh he's not running for points, although after his Rockingham win, he was indeed leading the points. So just saying on that front, that just shows how good Corey Heim is. But there's nothing to lose in this situation. He's not gonna, and even if you are teammates with each other, are you just gonna pull over and let the second place guy pass you? No, you're not going to let that happen. And I think that's very important to point out there, is that he's not going to let you by. And I would agree that Corey Heim, with to a certain extent, is just like, get thicker skin and just deal with it, which I agree with that. And I've seen a lot of fan discourse on this as well, where it's like, oh, well, Caden should be more aggressive and you should dump him next time. And here's my problem with this. I do agree with the idea that if Caden Honeycutt wants more if he wants more races to go his way, and if he wants more trips to victory lane, and if he's in a position to take advantage of a situation by possibly, giving the bumper to someone, that's completely fine. The problem that I have with it is this. I have seen a lot, and maybe this is me prying too much into how other people think, and I should really just be thinking about how I myself should think. But when you want young drivers and drivers coming up through the ranks to be aggressive and to basically not give a crap how you feel, and they end up doing it, and then all of a sudden when you pop up on the app, there's just this big, just whirlwind of emotion, just saying, this is why he's not getting opportunities, this is why he's not moving up the ladder. What do you want young guys to do at that point? You want them to be more aggressive. You want them to stick their nose in places that many people would find unethical, and they end up doing it, and all of a sudden there's an issue. That's my whole thing on that. But Corey Heim, victorious yet again. Caden Honeycutt, I'm sure there are more wins that will be falling your way in the not-so-distant future. And we've seen that before. You look at Caden Honeycutt's stats right now, and obviously he's not leading the points. That distinction belongs to Lane Riggs, but if we look at the points right here, Caden Honeycutt so far, 1 win, 8 top 5s, 9 top 10s. For someone who is just beginning their winning ways, I would say Caden Honeycutt is doing what he needs to do in this current point of the season. Could there have been more races that have fallen his way? Yes, absolutely. I don't see that as a ridiculous statement, but again, if you want to be more aggressive, go ahead, but don't be shocked when something goes awry and then people who praised it 1 minute and then go against it the next. I think that's just a little bit hypocritical. Now we get in to the Michigan Cup race, ladies and gentlemen. Let's just say this race, 400 miles, 200 laps, had a lot to talk about. So once again, Denny Hamlin was the pole sitter of the race, and just like Nashville, he had to start in the rear of the field, not because of a start line jump violation, more so for the fact of pre-race inspection. They actually sent a lot of cars to the back, and Denny Hamlin just happened to be one of them. So like at Nashville, Denny Hamlin would have to climb his way up through the field if he wanted a shot at winning, but that would give the pole to Carson Hocevar in the 77, who qualified second. Hocevar, his home track, but then Tyler Reddick got off to a very early lead, the 2024 winner, and we're thinking this might be another Tyler Reddick runaway day if we're not careful here. But then we basically saw the Toyota dominance begin with Reddick. Reddick ended up winning stage 1, which, by the way, I didn't even know this stat up until now. Tyler Reddick, despite having 5 wins so far this year, that was his first stage win of the season. So all the points that he had just came from his wins, which, not trying to discredit him or anything like that. Nathan Burkett, huge Tyler Reddick fan. I know you're watching right now. I'm not trying to discredit your boy. He's had a really good season and continued to have a good one. Well, until Michigan, I should say, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So the beginning of stage 2 was where the wheels kind of started to fall off, or I should first say the first major incident of the race, or major incidents of the race, involved one driver, and that was rookie Connor Zilic, just not having a great Michigan day. And in fact, besides an ARCA race, he did not make a top 3 Touring Series start at Michigan International Speedway until the Cup race this past weekend, because the O'Reilly Series last year didn't end up going to Michigan, which I think was kind of stupid because the 2024 race had that god awful package. But that's a tale for another time. But yeah. So Zilich, his Michigan day was cut short because of two spins, and the final spin he spun to the inside wall and impacted it heavily, and the front end was basically done. But the first major incident of the race came at the beginning of stage two, where a big stack up on the start of stage two collected a lot of drivers, a lot of major contenders too. That being Tyler Reddick, who suffered a lot of rear end damage, Ty Gibbs, who was up there, who actually finished behind Reddick in stage two. Which, by the way, Ty Gibbs had a really good average finish going into Michigan this past weekend. His worst finish in four prior starts was 11th, but that stat quickly went down the drain at the beginning of stage two. And how it all started was the 77 of Hocevar just giving a bad push at the beginning of the start. And Bubba Wallace was also collected in it as well, but he was able to keep going. So did Gibbs, but he had a lot of tape damage and stuff like that that basically took a top five away from him, which stinks if you're a Ty Gibbs fan or any JGR fan. But stage two continued, and it wasn't until, and we basically had a lot of cautions and stuff like that. It was so many to count, but the major incident of the race took place at lap 148 after a restart. A battle for second between another Gibbs car, the 20 of Christopher Bell, and the 9 car of Chase Elliott. They're racing side by side going into 3, and you're thinking, oh, something's got to give going into 3 right here. And it ultimately did, but in the worst way possible. Elliott, who was on the inside of Bell, got loose, and it looks like Elliott, the way Elliott gets loose, it looks like he's going to spin around. Like he's going to spin around, continuing to go left, if that makes sense. But no, the car overcorrected itself and went into the 20 of Christopher Bell and into the outside retaining wall. The hardest hit, yes, we can officially confirm this, the hardest hit of the next gen era from both the 20, from both the 9, and mostly the 20. Bell took the brunt of the hit so bad into the outside wall. Thankfully, both drivers were able to drop their winter nets and were okay. Well, presumably okay. They were able to exit their vehicles without any assistance from the AMR safety team. And Chase Elliott, being the gentleman that he is, I mean, I wouldn't know. I've never met Chase Elliott in person. But after exiting his car, Elliott came by to talk to Bell, basically just saying, hey, man, that was completely on accident. That was not, I did not mean to do that intentionally. I just got loose underneath you. And Bell looked like he completely understood it from when the cameras showed it. And then to further confirm that, when Elliott was checked and released from the infield care center, he basically said the same thing. He was just like, yeah, man, I went to go tell him I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. And yeah, so of course, I don't think anybody believed it was anything intentional. It was just two drivers racing hard for second, and one got loose underneath, and it just all hell broke loose essentially. But it wouldn't be until later on in the race that Christopher Bell would end up getting checked and released from the infield care center. But Joe Gibbs, car owner Joe Gibbs, had to go and check on him to see how he was doing. And it wasn't until a photo surfaced at the end of the race, or basically when all the teams and drivers were boarding their private aircrafts and were ready to head back to North Carolina, that you could see a cast on Christopher Bell's left arm, and they're saying that he was dealing with a wrist and some ankle issues. From the photo, it didn't look like he had a boot on like one of his ankles, so I'm sure it could still be sore, but it didn't look like it was bad enough for a boot. But you could see a cast on his left wrist, and we're thinking, oh man, Bell already having a rough 2026 season enough as it is. I mean, he's definitely going to miss some time here, but we'll get into that later on what the status of him going into Pocono Raceway this weekend is going to be about, essentially. But after a red flag delay of that accident, which that hit was the hardest hit in the next gen era, basically over 100 G hit, like 105 G hit. It was the hardest hit any series has seen since the 2015 season. Whether it was either Kyle Busch's leg injury at Daytona that season, or it was the Austin Dillon flip into the catch fence and Cup at the exact same track later on that summer. Um, but yeah, it was just a hard hit for Bell. Glad to see both drivers were able to walk away. Just the testament of the safety of all these race cars truly is remarkable. It's just always remarkable to see. Then the last half of the race, you would have thought that the Toyota dominance was coming to an end, but remember Denny Hamlin, how he had to start at the rear of the field? No, sirree, Bob. We're not going to change that. Denny Hamlin marched his way towards the front and was able to lead the last decent amount of the race without any sort of green flag pit stop whatsoever. And Denny Hamlin not only taking home his third win of the 2026 season, his 63rd overall career win, tying Kyle Busch, the late great Kyle Busch, in ninth on NASCAR's all-time win list in the NASCAR Cup Series. Kyle Busch, before his passing, 63 career Cup Series wins and 2 championships. Hamlin has now tied that at the age of 45, and Bell did an amazing tribute at the end of the race where he got a number 18. Well, it was a stylized 18 flag, the 1 being in JGR font, the 8 being in the RCR font, and then Busch's signature at the bottom there. They are planning to sell hats of that, and I want to get my hands on one of those hats sometime soon, because that is just an amazing tribute for a legend that even weeks after, we are still processing his passing. And for Hamlin to go out and tie him and wins this suit. And I already it's funny because I said this year that by Pocono, because Hamlin had 60 wins going into this year, I said, I believe by when we get to Pocono, Denny Hamlin is either going to tie Busch in wins or surpass him. And now, mind you, I made this prediction without the assumption that this tragedy was going to happen. I did not have that in mind whatsoever, and I know a lot of people weren't going to think that, but I just want to completely address that because the prediction happened, but there was also unforeseen circumstances that went along with it. So I just want to quickly address that while we have that. But yeah, and it's also National Debt Relief's first win as a primary sponsor since joining Hamlin last year. So not that that has any importance to the win. I just thought that was I like sponsorship win stats, that sort of thing, because I think it's just a unique stat. So, but we're going to take a look at the finishing order regarding the win. So Denny Hamlin, 63rd career win for him. Huge shout out to Legacy Motor Club, especially the 43 car of Eric Jones, another one of the Michigan natives in this race alongside Hocevar and, of course, Brad Keselowski. Eric Jones, despite finishing 10 seconds behind Denny Hamlin, that 43 car had a very, very solid weekend. Legacy Motor Club, when you least expect it, they tend to strike a lot. And that's something that is very unique about this team for me. And I've always believed, alongside a guy like Chris Buescher, even though Buescher has 4 more wins than him, I've always believed Eric Jones is underrated. I've always believed that Eric Jones is an underrated driver, and he can definitely get a lot out of his equipment, and this right here shows it. Bubba Wallace, despite being in that Hocevar-related incident earlier in the race, still managed a top 5 finish, comes home in 3rd. Gotta love that confidence from the 23 team. But I wanted to circle back to Bubba Wallace real quick because, of course, Hocevar was the contributing factor in that early stage 2 incident, and Bubba was the first man, and I'm sure he's had a few other messages relayed, but the first one-on-one in-person conversation with another driver to come by Carson Hocevar and basically tell him, and Bubba even said it himself, he's like, listen, man, at your age, I am jealous that you have so much speed like that, but you got to do better. And this is the same song and dance with Carson Hocevar. The guy is talented. The guy has speed. He has raw speed. He has this raw ability that we have not seen in quite some time. Of course, there's different ways to determine how talented a driver is. And I think, that goes, with Larson, he's a generational talent, but there's other forms of talented. And the Hocevar is in a unique, talented spot of his own that I would agree of. And sometimes high risk with Hocevar can equal potential high reward, but can also lead to a bunch of wrecked up race cars. And whether he's doing this on purpose or not, Hocevar has made it abundantly clear before that he's not going to change anytime soon. He's not going to change his driving style because honestly, it's worked out for him so far. And we're in year 3 of his Cup career too, might I add. If Hocevar was doing, listen, man, and I'm not saying, and listen, I think that if Hocevar messes up, yes, he should definitely be called out on it. But my whole thing is this: why hasn't, and listen, I'm not in favor of physical altercations, man. I think we could settle things using our words. But let me ask you this: how come more drivers aren't confronting him a lot more? Well, it's pretty simple. He simply just doesn't care. He doesn't care how you feel. He doesn't care how you think. He'll try to race with respect, but respect is only going to get you so far in this top series. And you could call me hypocritical by saying, when we had the Caden Honeycutt discussion earlier, but Hocevar is a very unique case because a lot of people like him. A lot of people say that he reminds them of a young Dale Earnhardt. Personally, I really don't see that. I mean, obviously, I didn't grow up in the Dale Earnhardt era, so I can't really, confirm or deny that statement by any means. But I feel like we've had this conversation before where it's just like, is he going to change? Is he going to stay the same? And honestly, as long as he's putting butts in seats, which, if it weren't for the fact of what we dealt with the past few weeks, I think Carson Hocevar is giving Chase Elliott a run for his money for the most popular driver award. And I think Chase Elliott might still win it, but I don't believe it's going to be a large margin like we've seen in the past before. Because Hocevar, everywhere you go, and I have not been to the racetrack in 2 years now. I didn't go to a race last year. I don't think I'm going to a race this year due to financial constraints, but we'll see about 2027. But I've heard stories about people who have gone to races this year that have said that they have seen a lot of 77 merch, whether it's in the fan zone, in the grandstands, in the infield or anything like that. They have seen a lot of it. Of course, you still have, your Hamlin fans, your Elliott fans, Kyle Larson, Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, a lot of those other guys and stuff like that. But Carson Hocevar is the hottest commodity that we have had in NASCAR for a while. And he recently just got put on the Times top 100 most influential people of the year so far. When was the last time we had a driver before this year join that list in regards to the athlete section of it? When was the last time we saw something like that? Do you know how important you got to be? Do you know how much and listen, I hate using this term. I really do, because I hate when people use these in any, not just motorsports, but sports debates, period. Do you know how much aura you have to have in order to be a part of that list? I'm just saying. But speaking of Hocevar, he came home 5th right behind Larson, who was in 4th. Daniel Suarez, another solid run for that 7-Spire team, comes home 6th. Joey Logano actually had a really solid day. This was probably the best day that I've seen from the 22 team all season. And that's not really meant to be a compliment. That's meant to be a statement of concern. But yeah, Ryan Blaney comes home eighth, Chris Buescher ninth, and Chase Briscoe rounds out the top 10. So, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that was Michigan. Once again, big congrats to Denny Hamlin and that number 11 team for their 63rd win of the year and tying the late, great Kyle Busch, who not only was a teammate and competitor alongside Hamlin, he was also a friend of his. And yeah, just the emotions of Sunday were truly unmatched. Now I move on to the podcast points, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a while since we last talked about the podcast points, but let's go over it. Adam currently, before Michigan, led with 92 points. He picked Chase Briscoe to win. Briscoe ended up finishing 10th in the race, so that's awarding 5 points. So Adam goes into Pocono with 97 total points to his name. I am currently still second. I had 80 points going into the weekend. Ryan Blaney finished top 10, comes home 7th. So I now have 85 points going into Pocono. And then Emma, who actually did the best of the entire group, had Carson Hocevar winning. Hocevar ends up 5th. That's 10 points for her. So now she sits at 70 points going on to this weekend. And of course, Emma, being so close to Pocono Raceway, she will be our Revved Up correspondent this weekend. So happy for Emma. Hopefully she has fun at all the races this weekend and can't wait to see her there. So, but yeah, those are the podcast points heading into Pocono this upcoming weekend. So moving on to the new. Oh, my fault. My phone went off, and it showcased a funny video off of the show Chowder. The scene where it's like, no money means no animation. Probably one of my favorite fourth wall breaks of all time. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, we must move on to the news segment part of the show. Circling back to the Christopher Bell incident on lap 148, despite the fact that he was seen walking with the cast to the plane, which was the photo that was surfacing on social media, Christopher Bell and Joe Gibbs Racing announced that he has been cleared to compete in his number 20 Toyota Camry this weekend at Pocono Raceway. I don't know how. I don't know what procedures he went through to get himself cleared, but race car drivers being the tough individuals that they are, and Christopher Bell, of course, here is no different, will race this weekend at Pocono. And we mentioned earlier that it is the hardest impact that they have had in a decade. It says here in this article right here, according to Mike Ford, that delta V is the measure of speed loss in an accident. So if you're going 200 miles per hour and all of a sudden you come to a stop because you hit a wall and scrub off X amount of speed, that is difference in what the difference is what the delta V is. Goodness, that was a mouthful. So yeah, one of the harder hits, but Christopher Bell still going to compete this weekend at Pocono Raceway. I don't know if they will have a relief driver on standby for him in case that he's not able to go all 400 miles around the tricky triangle, but that's just going to be one of those bridges that we will have to cross when we come to it. So there you have it for that one. We mentioned earlier in the show how there was some silly season news that went on, and there was more that happened earlier today. Josh Berry announced that he will not be returning to Wood Brothers Racing in 2027. The 35-year-old driver made it clear that he will not be returning to the number 21 Ford Mustang after just 2 full-time seasons of competition with them in the NASCAR Cup Series. In the quote, it says, in the near future, just to go ahead and put it out there, I will not be back in the 21 car next year. They've been amazing to work with, amazing people, and it's been such a great opportunity. What I didn't want to do was sit here and feed a line to you guys and then have it get announced later. So I feel like that makes it pretty ignorant. So I wasn't going to do that. In the NASCAR article written by Nathan Solomon, it explains that Barry is currently sitting 30th in points through 15 races of 2026, and basically just talked about that the narrative wasn't completely blindsided. And Barry said, and I quote, "You hear the rumor mill started going, so I'm not going to say that I wasn't completely caught off guard. I didn't feel exactly great about it. I probably would have said myself I was probably 50-50 in what was going on. Obviously, hit the ground running here, working hard to try to find out what's out there, and certainly open and optimistic about any future opportunities that come my way. But first and foremost, we're going to do our best to finish the season strong and leave in a good place. So, make that another seat that is officially opened up, and the Wood Brothers released an official statement, which we will read to to the masses here, and it reads as follows. Wood Brothers Racing, the longest running active team competing in NASCAR, confirmed today that it will not exercise its option with driver Josh Berry for the 2027 NASCAR Cup Series season. Currently in his second year with the team, Berry will continue to race the number 21 Ford Mustang Dark Horse through the balance of the 2026 season. Wood Brothers Racing will announce the new driver of the number 21 um, Ford Mustang for the 2027 Cup Series season in the near future. We thank Josh Berry for all he's done for the Wood Brothers, for Wood Brothers Racing, and our partners over the last 2 seasons. Josh has been a great teammate, and we will look forward to finishing a strong finish this season. We wish Josh all the best moving forward. We will announce who will be driving the number 21, and we are excited what lies ahead for Wood Brothers Racing. So, the same song and dance before when a driver announces that he will not return to the organization for the following year. They say, oh, we will announce the driver at a later date. And we've heard a lot of names being thrown around in regards to this ride. But one name in particular that has really stood out has been defending O'Reilly Auto Parts Series champion Jesse Love. Currently in his third full-time season in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. Love is currently sitting second in points so far without a win, but he has 6 top 5s and 10 top 10s, and across 3 seasons, he has only won 3 times in his career. And the most prominent one was when he clinched the championship last season, which honestly Connor Zilch should have won, but that's beyond me. Jesse Love has been a very interesting prospect because he was also one of the youngest NASCAR champions in history, where he won the ARCA Menards Series West Championship at just the young age of 15. Still a record that still holds true to this very day back in 2020. I'm sure Love will get to victory lane at some point this year, but a lot of people are like, well, wait a minute, the Wood Brothers, isn't RCR going to have an opening for 2027? And while that is true, Jesse Love looks like him and the RCR relationship will part ways at the end of the season. And the main reason why is not because of any sort of backlash between the two or anything like that. It is because that the now numbered as the number 33 for RCR, has nicotine and liquor sponsorships, maybe bourbon primarily Rebel Bourbon as one of the primary sponsors. So while Jesse Love, he is 21 years old, he legally can consume and purchase those. He is not able to sponsor them. Some of those sponsors, like a guy who is 25 and older, to be the primary sort of, sponsorship guy. Because, listen, while Jesse Love is a 21-year-old adult male, he can legally buy nicotine or drink however much he wants to, legally speaking. When you look at Jesse Love in a picture, whether it's a professional or, outgoing setting, does that look like a 21-year-old to you? He looks like, and I think Eric Hestep put it very, very bluntly, he looks like one of those kid actor stars that you would see in like those Disney Channel movies. And honestly, with him also being from California as well, I think that's definitely fitting. So it's not because of a talent standpoint. I think Jesse Love is a talented prospect, but yeah, I think sponsorship definitely has I wouldn't call it a stranglehold, so to speak, but they definitely play a role on who they want to represent their brand, and that goes for all sponsors as a whole. So that's the situation that's going on there. But Jesse Love with the Wood Brothers, that of course would mean that he would have been with all 3 touring or all 3 manufacturers at some point or another. He was with Toyota when he won his ARCA Series championship in 2023. He's currently with Chevrolet with RCR, and now if he were to go to the Wood Brothers, he would be a part of the Blue Ovals and the Ford, and he would also be a part of the Penske Alliance, which that's while the Wood Brothers like to call themselves a separate team, their cars are built in house with Team Penske. So he might not be going to a bad situation. But my problem with the Wood Brothers is that they have not had a consistent driver, I would argue, since Paul Menard. And I know a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, well, when Matt DiBenedetto was there for 2 seasons, they were doing fine there." But that's the problem, though. The last few drivers in this car have not lasted longer than 3 years. I mean, let's think about it. For example, Ryan Blaney lasted what 2-3 years before he went off the team Penske. Paul Menard lasted 2 seasons before he retired, and that was obviously his choice. But then Matt DiBenedetto spent 20 and 21 in that ride. He gets bounced for Harrison Burton. Harrison Burton spends 3 years in that car, only wins one race, which I mean, still a monumental achievement. And he ended the Wood Brothers winless streak and got them their 100th win. Um, but still, let go. It still wasn't good enough for him to be in that seat. He was always like sub 30th in standings. And then Josh Berry comes in 2025, and you're thinking, the first 5 races of the season, you're thinking, man, this is the change of the tide for the Wood Brothers. And then after that Las Vegas win, which we'll give Josh Berry credit, he has won at NASCAR's highest level. The results, like the flash in the pan has been over since then, and 2026 has not been the year that he had been anticipating. And honestly, it's disappointing for him because I've always respected Josh Berry. I've always liked the come up story that he's had his entire career. I think that's truly been a remarkable thing for him. But just, man, it's really been difficult to watch. It just seems like he's always involved in incidents that either are his own doing or not his own doing, but he somehow gets collected. And he's only had 2 top 10 finishes this year. It's just my overwhelming fear. My point here is I have the feeling that Jesse Love, if it is indeed true that he is linked to that ride and he has already signed the contract, which God only knows what he's been doing during his off time. I'm not going to pry into that, but let's just say in a scenario he does sign that contract, he does end up going to the Wood Brothers. I mean, do we see him? I mean, with the recent pattern, does he last more than 3 seasons? Does he actually live up to expectations? Does he somehow break the mold of how, I wouldn't call the 21 car curse, but they have not had a driver that's gone on for more than 3 years in that car since Ryan Blaney. So that's just what I personally think. That's just what I personally think. But time will only tell who will pilot that number 21 Ford Mustang. And I honestly really thought Josh Berry was going to be the guy for that seat. After that Vegas win last season, I'm just like, man, this is, like I mentioned before, we're seeing the tide change for this team. And then we realized it was all a flash in the pan. And I hope Josh Berry lands on his feet somewhere. I think he definitely still deserves a ride in the top 3 touring series. Maybe he goes back down to, his buddy Dale Jr. and runs another full-time season in the O'Reilly Auto Parts series. Nothing wrong with that. Contend for a championship there, like his former teammate Justin Allgaier's doing. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But let me know what you guys think, who you guys think will replace Josh Berry in that 21 car. Now we look ahead to Pocono this weekend, ladies and gentlemen. This is where we wrap up the ending of the show to talk about the schedule this weekend. Of course, Pocono, the tricky triangle, ladies and gentlemen, should make for some unique racing and could make for some unique winners. We'll just have to wait and see on that front, but let's take a look at the weekend schedule. Of course, no Truck Series racing this weekend. They will be at the Colorado Naval Base at San Diego for when we go street racing at San Diego next week. Should be a very unique race, which, by the way, iRacing revealed the final layout. Is that the layout that they're finally running? So many runoff areas, so much space to work with, and so many narrow parts as well. But yeah, we will preview that in next week's episode. But we got to get through Pocono first. So let's talk a little bit about that more, shall we? So on Saturday, we have the Miller Tech Battery 250 for the NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. On Saturday, June 13th at 10:30 a.m., we'll have practice followed by qualifying at 11:35 a.m. Those will be streamed on the CW app, and then at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the race will be broadcasted on CW Sports. Then on the same day, Saturday, June 13th, we have Cup Series practice beginning at 1 p.m. with qualifying following right after at 2:10 p.m. They will be streamed on Amazon Prime. And then Sunday, June 14th, we have the Great American Getaway 400 at Pocono Raceway, 160 laps, 400 miles. That will be streamed on Prime Video. Prime's coverage of NASCAR is starting to already wrap up, and I'm just, emotionally speaking, I am not prepared for that. It's too good, man. It's too good. But let's take a look at the weekend picks for this weekend, ladies and gentlemen, presented by our lovely members of Revved Up and both Adam Schwab and Emma Bruder. Yeah, let's get into it. So Adam, since he has the lead, he will go first with his picks. Well, actually, technically, since this is Emma's, quote unquote, Emma's weekend in regards to being at the racetrack, she will have picks with at first. So she made an ARCA pick, but we don't normally cover ARCA. But for the O'Reilly Series race, she is going with Jesse Love. He finished runner-up in this race last year to Connor Zilisch, so not a bad pick. For my O'Reilly Series pick, I'm going to go with the 00 car of Sheldon Creed. Sheldon already got a win in Atlanta earlier this year. Who's to say he can't get another one, and why not let it come at Pocono? So, yeah, give me Sheldon Creed to win. And then Adam's pick, we will scroll down here and get to that. He is going to go with Corey Day to win the O'Reilly Series race. So we're all picking Chevrolet drivers to win, but then again, that's what the series is mainly built off of. So it's not really a major shock. Now for the main event on Sunday, ladies and gentlemen, the Cup Series race at Pocono. Emma's going to go first with her pick. She is going to go with Ty Gibbs to win at Pocono on Sunday. Toyota has been historically strong here at Pocono. They were able to get it done last year with Chase Briscoe. So why not Toyota get another chance at it? So she's going to go with Ty Gibbs. Adam is going to go with the idea of a three-peat. He's going to pick Denny Hamlin to go 3 in a row, and honestly, that might be the pick to beat this weekend because if anybody's on a heater right now, it's that 11 car of Denny Hamlin, and we all know how good he is at Pocono. So, I wouldn't be surprised if he went 3 in a row. So he's going to go with Hamlin. I am going to go with last year's winner because this guy really needs a shot in the arm. I'm going to go with the 19 car of Chase Briscoe. So yeah, we're all on the Joe Gibbs Racing hype train this weekend. That might backfire in our face. That might not. We'll just have to wait and see. So to recap for our picks for O'Reilly's, I have Sheldon Creed. Emma has Jesse Love. Adam has Corey Day. And for the Cup Series race on Sunday, Adam has Denny Hamlin, Emma has Ty Gibbs, and I have Chase Briscoe. So those are our picks for this weekend, ladies and gentlemen, at Pocono. And that will do it for this week's episode. Thank you all so much for tuning in to Revved Up. I know we didn't have an episode last week, and once again, I deeply apologize. When your health does weird things, you do everything in your power to make sure that you check up on it and make sure everything's handled. You know what I mean? Make sure everything is handled because you never know what can happen. You might overreact to something or you might not. Who knows? But tune in next week, ladies and gentlemen, as we preview an unprecedented weekend on June 19th to the 21st where we have the San Diego street race. Should be a lot of fun to watch. I honestly can't wait for it. It should be very, very fun. But yeah, so as always, I have been your host, Carter Leonard, and we will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.